Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. She didn't talk for a month. No fight. No yelling. No slammed doors. Just a slow, calculated withdrawal. A silence that wasn't peaceful, it was tactical. And I felt it from the very first morning she walked past me without saying good morning. At first, I thought she was upset. Maybe I forgot something. Maybe it was just stress. But day after day, she said nothing. Her eyes stopped meeting mine. Her phone became her new companion. Her smile, once warm and constant, vanished like it had been packed away in some drawer I no longer had the key to. That's when I understood it wasn't just distance. It was control. Her silence wasn't confusion. It was punishment. Withholding connection, affection, words. Not because she didn't know what to say, but because she wanted me to feel small, uncertain, unanchored. And I did. For the first 2 weeks, I played into it. Tried to ask what was wrong. Offered to talk. Made her coffee the way she liked it. Left notes on the counter. Got her favorite takeout. She didn't even look at it. It was like I didn't exist. I started to shrink in my own home. That's the thing no one tells you about this kind of silence. It's not passive. It's violent in its own way. It forces you to question reality. To ask yourself if you imagined everything that came before. If maybe you're the problem. But I wasn't the problem. She was done, but not ready to say it. And until she decided how to rewrite the story, she kept me suspended in limbo. So I stopped asking. I stopped chasing. And the second I did, she noticed. Because her power only worked if I stayed in the game. The moment I withdrew, the balance shifted. Not with words. With actions. I left earlier. Came back later. Stopped waiting for her to engage. And the silence she once used as a weapon started closing in on her instead. Then came the text. A full month later, at 11:42 p.m., her name popped up on my screen with 3 words. Can we talk? I stared at it for a while and didn't answer. Because sometimes, the most powerful move you can make is no move at all. The moment I left that text on read, something shifted. She had expected the old me. The one who over-communicated, who tried to fix things, who was always afraid to let the silence stretch too long. But that version of me didn't exist anymore. He had starved to death in the quiet she built. I didn't block her. I didn't reply. I didn't even delete the message. I just let it sit there. And from that point forward, I watched a slow unraveling. She started showing up at places she hadn't been in weeks. Same gym, same grocery store, same streets I passed through. I wasn't sure if it was accidental or strategic, but I didn't acknowledge her. Not once. I let the space between us do what words couldn't. Then a friend of mine, Brian, mentioned he saw her out one night. Said she looked different. Not bad. Just off. Like someone trying too hard to seem untouched. Tight dress, fake laugh, eyes that scanned the room too quickly. She kept looking at the door, he said. Like she was waiting for someone who wasn't coming. I knew exactly who she was waiting for. Meanwhile, I was working late. Lifting heavier. Talking less. My focus tightened like a lens clicking into place. I didn't need closure. I needed distance. I started building a new rhythm, one where her absence wasn't a wound, but a weight lifted. Then I saw it, her Instagram story. A photo of a wine glass and the edge of someone's hand. Not mine. Captioned, "Good conversations hit different." It wasn't jealousy that hit me. It was how cheap the tactic was. Transparent. Performed. And more than anything, desperate. Because deep down, she knew. Whatever game she thought she was playing, it was over. The moment she went silent, she bet everything on me folding. But I didn't fold. I adapted. And now, she was texting a number I didn't answer, because I didn't need to. I had learned something she never expected me to learn. Silence doesn't just disconnect. It reveals who someone becomes when they can no longer control the narrative. And what I saw in her silence was someone I never wanted back. After the staged wine glass post, I stopped looking at her social media altogether. That was the final signal I needed. She wasn't healing. She was performing. She needed the illusion of indifference more than she needed truth. But I was no longer her audience. Still, detachment doesn't mean ignorance. It means awareness without obsession. One night, a guy I knew from a mutual circle, Derek, sent me a screenshot. I hadn't asked for it. He just wrote, "Thought you should see this." It was a photo from a group dinner. She was there, seated too close to a guy she once said was just a friend. The same guy she always paused before mentioning. The same guy she swore never texted her past 10 p.m. He had his arm behind her on the booth, not touching, but close enough to signal possession. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the camera, smiling with the confidence of someone who thought she got away with something. And maybe she had, for a while. But the real tell wasn't the photo. It was the pattern. Late-night Venmo transactions. A shared Uber history. Spotify activity that mirrored his playlists. The details added up like breadcrumbs she never meant to leave behind. And I wasn't even trying to catch her. I had simply stopped ignoring the signs. Because silence doesn't protect the guilty, it just delays the reveal. I didn't confront her. I didn't post anything. I didn't text Derek back. I simply documented. Quietly. Completely. Not out of revenge. Out of clarity. I wanted to remember how far I'd come the next time she said she missed us. Because nostalgia has a short memory. Proof doesn't. I backed up everything. Phone records. Photos. A journal of dates and inconsistencies. Not to use against her, but to remind myself what gaslighting feels like. What self-betrayal looks like when it hides behind denial and routine. This wasn't about a single betrayal. It was about how she weaponized distance, then played victim when the silence turned back on her. She wanted control. She got it. But now she was texting a number that no longer held space for her apologies. Not because I hated her, but because I finally respected myself enough to be unreachable. The day I disappeared wasn't marked by drama. No shouting, no posts, no goodbye. Just silence. The kind you don't notice until it swallows everything. She had grown used to me being available. I was always there, emotionally, logistically, physically. She didn't realize her power came from access. So I took it away. One evening, I packed my essentials, logged out of our shared streaming accounts, disabled our smart home devices, and rerouted my mail. I left no note, no explanation. I didn't slam the door. I closed it quietly behind me, and that silence became the loudest message I'd ever sent. That night, she called 5 times. The next morning, 10 texts. One-word messages at first, then longer ones, then voice notes. I didn't respond to a single one. She had spent a month weaponizing distance. Now she was drowning in it. I changed my routines entirely. New gym, new route to work. Switched up my playlists, deleted old threads, wiped shared photo albums. Not to erase the past, just to stop it from bleeding into my future. She reached out to mutuals, trying to find out where I was. Asking if I was okay. Asking if I'd met someone. One of them asked if I wanted them to pass a message along. I told him, tell her nothing. Let the silence speak. Because real power isn't in reaction. It's in restraint. I started sleeping better. Eating better. My apartment felt like mine again. No emotional clutter. No need to decode someone's moods. Just quiet, this time my own. A week later, I got a message from an unknown number. I miss you. I didn't need to check who it was. She wasn't missing me. She was missing access. That was the difference. She had spent a month not talking, thinking it would break me. But all it did was remind me who I used to be before I started begging for scraps of attention. Now she was texting a number I didn't answer. Because disappearing wasn't revenge. It was healing. There's something dangerous about a man who feels nothing and watches everything. While she was spiraling, I stayed quiet. Not because I didn't care, because I cared too much to let emotion drive me. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to build one. I remembered his name, Ethan. The friend. The man from the booth, the playlist, the late-night likes. I didn't need revenge. I needed truth. Clean, undeniable, and silent. So I started watching. Not her. Him. It's easy when someone wants to be seen. His social media was wide open. His ego even wider. A few hours into his feed, and I already had details she probably didn't know. The investment firm he worked for, his side hustle and crypto coaching, and most importantly, the overlap. 3 clients of his were companies my firm audited. All I needed was one late-night document dump. One file that shouldn't have been attached to a casual email chain. One cross-reference between his business activities and non-disclosure agreements. It took 5 days. I didn't expose him directly. I didn't have to. I forwarded the file, anonymously, to the compliance team at his firm. No threats. No accusations. Just data. Pure and clean. Within a week, Ethan's LinkedIn went silent. His Instagram story. Empty. And the group dinners? They stopped too. She must have noticed, because out of nowhere, I got another message from her, longer this time. Something about not knowing who people really are, how she made mistakes, how maybe we could talk. I didn't reply, because the move wasn't for her. It was for me. I wasn't taking him down to win her back. I was taking him out of the frame she once used to humiliate me. It wasn't violence. It wasn't noise. It was strategy. She chose someone reckless and impulsive. Someone who posted before he thought. Someone who forgot that power lives in silence. And that's the thing. When you stop reacting, you start calculating. And when a man stops chasing answers, he starts collecting consequences. Not for revenge, but for clarity. She played with the illusion of options. I reminded her what consequences feel like when they knock quietly. There's a difference between being left out and being iced out. What came next wasn't loud. It wasn't public. It wasn't even revenge. It was a surgical extraction from people, spaces, and narratives where she once held weight. It started with her inner circle. People talk, even when they think they're being discreet, especially when they believe you've become invisible. I stayed silent. But silence, when calculated, is louder than any confrontation. And one by one, the story started leaking. She had framed our distance as we grew apart, told some that I became emotionally unavailable, to others that I'd stopped trying. But truth always moves faster than performance, especially when it's grounded in proof. And I had proof. I didn't show it. I seeded it. A mutual friend posted a memory from last year, her birthday dinner. In it, I was behind the camera, arranging the surprise she swore I forgot. Another shared a clip of her laughing at a private joke only I used to make. They didn't mean to expose her, but real moments do that. No need to comment. No need to correct. Just let the timeline do its job. The narrative started cracking. People who once echoed her version of things started asking quiet questions. Questions she couldn't control. The same ones she used to weaponize were now slipping from her grip. I watched it unfold from a distance. Her comments slowed. Likes dipped. DMs dried up. And then came the moment that hit her hardest, at a baby shower of a mutual friend. She walked in smiling. But when it came time for group photos, no one made space for her. Not by malice. By instinct. Because people can feel when something's off, even if no one says it out loud. Later, I got a text from that same mutual friend. She didn't stay long. Looked out of place. She was. Because the version of her that belonged in those rooms had disappeared the same moment I did. That's what she never understood. When you lose someone who was your anchor, you don't just lose the person. You lose the gravity they brought to your life. She built silence thinking it would isolate me. But in the end, it only isolated her. Isolation has a sound. It doesn't scream. It hums, low, steady, relentless. That was her new soundtrack, and I didn't have to play it. She composed it herself. I saw her once, by accident. Outside the cafe we both used to love. I was walking in with a client. She was walking out with no one. She paused when she saw me. I didn't. I nodded once, nothing more, and kept moving. She didn't expect that. She expected a double take. A hesitation. A flicker of old emotion. But I trained myself not to blink. Her presence no longer registered as a threat. It was just data. A past variable in a life I no longer solved for. Later that week, I got a DM from a fake account. No name. Just a message. You really don't feel anything? She never signed it. She didn't have to. The language was familiar. Her guilt had a voice, and that voice was trying to survive. But guilt doesn't land the same when you've made peace with what broke you. She had burned the bridge thinking I'd swim back through the fire. But I'd already built a different route, one that didn't include her. That week, she reached out to one of my oldest friends. Said she wanted to talk. Not to me, through him. That's how I knew she wasn't looking for closure. She was looking for access. And access was something I'd shut down with precision. I changed apartment buildings. Switched car leases. Canceled shared memberships. Deleted photo backups. I wasn't running. I was decluttering. And the heaviest thing I ever removed was her presence. She started posting more. Long captions. Vague sadness. Quotes about growth and letting go. But none of it was for herself. It was bait. And I'd stopped biting a long time ago. A mutual told me she cried at a party. Broke down mid-conversation when someone asked about me. Said she didn't recognize the person I'd become. That was the point. She had known me as predictable, loyal, and available. But when I stopped giving her the script, she lost the role. And the silence that she once used to punish me, it became the mirror she couldn't look into anymore. The confrontation came, not with shouting or chaos, but with something colder, a request for closure. She showed up where she knew I'd be. A charity gala. Public, composed, no room for theatrics. She looked tired, like someone rehearsing strength but leaking regret at the seams. She caught me between conversations. Asked if we could talk. Just 5 minutes. I paused, not out of hesitation, but calculation. Then I nodded once, motioned toward a quiet hallway. No audience. No drama. Just space. She started with a breath. Then the script. I never meant to hurt you. Her voice trembled slightly. I was confused. Lost. I didn't think you'd just disappear. That was the moment I realized she hadn't processed any of it. She still thought the pain was mutual, that I'd been suspended in the same emotional limbo she had manufactured. But I wasn't suspended. I was free. I didn't reply. Not right away. I let silence fill the room like smoke. She waited, fidgeted, kept looking for a crack in my expression. A twitch, a sigh, something she could grab onto and turn into hope. I gave her nothing. And in that nothing, she unraveled. Not in an explosive way, in a quiet, devastating one. Her shoulders sank. Her eyes broke contact. And she muttered something barely audible. I guess I really lost you. That was the first honest thing she'd said since the day she ghosted me. Still, I said very little. Just 4 words. You never had me. Not the real me. Not the version that showed up daily. That gave, forgave, waited. She had a version of me she used when it was convenient and dismissed when it wasn't. A placeholder. A background character in her story. Now, the roles had reversed. She looked like she wanted to say more. Maybe ask a question. Maybe beg for softness. But I turned before she could. Walked back into the gala. Rejoined the people who saw my value without needing to break me first. Behind me, the silence roared louder than any argument. I didn't disappear. I evolved past her reach. There's a kind of fall that doesn't echo. No public collapse. No screaming. Just a quiet drop. Slow, internal, and irreversible. That was her unraveling, and no one stood close enough to catch it. I didn't hear about it from gossip or rumors. It came in fragments, pieces of a life cracking under its own weight. First, she left her job, claimed it was burnout. Then she moved back to her mother's place to save money. Her once curated world started thinning out. Fewer posts, fewer friends, fewer smiles that looked real. But this wasn't punishment. I wasn't watching from a distance and smiling. I felt nothing. That was the scariest part, for her, not for me. Because I used to be the guy who'd notice her silence, who'd check in when no one else did. But I'd trained myself out of that reflex. I'd replaced empathy with neutrality. Her fall wasn't mine to witness anymore. A mutual friend reached out, asked if I knew how she was doing. I said, I haven't thought about her in weeks. That was a lie, but lies can be medicinal. Sometimes silence isn't healing, it's armor. Apparently, she'd tried reconnecting with people. People she used to orbit with, the same ones she ghosted during her rise. But they didn't answer with the same warmth. Some didn't answer at all. Because when you burn bridges, you don't get to choose which ones stay standing. One of her old friends messaged me out of the blue. Said she looked different. Not older, emptier. Like someone who had seen their reflection too clearly and didn't like what stared back. That's when I realized something. Her collapse wasn't external. It was existential. She hadn't just lost me. She'd lost the version of herself that existed through me. I was her mirror, her balance, her buffer from her own chaos. When I stepped away, she was forced to meet the version of herself she had been ignoring. And that version? She couldn't curate it, couldn't mute it, couldn't block it. That's the risk when you build your confidence on someone else's stability. Once it's gone, you realize your strength wasn't yours. It was borrowed, and I stopped lending. The last time I saw her, it wasn't planned. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't closure. It was something colder, an accident placed perfectly by timing. I was at a bookstore downtown, Saturday afternoon, browsing alone like I often do now. Clean slate, clear mind, no trace of who I was before. She walked in 10 minutes later. Didn't see me at first. She was thinner, less polished. The kind of look someone wears when they've stopped pretending everything's fine. She wasn't with anyone. Her steps were slower, cautious, like the world had grown louder around her. When she spotted me, she froze. Just for a second. Then she smiled. Weakly. Almost apologetically. As if she was hoping time had softened me. That maybe the air between us had thinned enough for words. But I didn't give her words. I gave her stillness. Not out of anger. Not out of pride. Just certainty. The kind that doesn't need explanation. I nodded once. Just enough to be human. Then I turned back to the book in my hands and kept reading. She stood there for another second. Maybe two. Then she walked away. Slowly. Back into whatever silence she now called her life. I didn't watch her go. Because I already knew what she was walking into. Her own reflection. Not the version shaped by my loyalty, my attention, or my presence. But the real one. The version that's always been there, waiting beneath the noise. That's the part she never understood. Losing someone doesn't always come with screaming, slamming doors, or final words. Sometimes, it comes with nothing. And that nothing? It grows louder every day. The silence she used as a weapon had turned on her. And now, it followed her everywhere. Not haunting, not violent, just constant, unforgiving, and permanent. I didn't leave to hurt her. I left to find myself. But in doing so, I showed her something she never expected. That the man she dismissed without warning could disappear with the same precision. Only difference? She thought I'd come back. I never did. Because I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.